To the hills. At the end of August, when the rains were nearly over, we met at the pool to make plans for the autumn holidays. We had bathed and were stretched out in the shade of the fresh, rain washed sal trees when Kamal, pointing vaguely to the distant mountains, said, "Why don't we go to the Pindari glacier?" "The glacier?" exclaimed Anil. "But that's all snow and ice." "Of course it is," said Kamal. "But there's a path through the mountains that goes all the way to the foot of the glacier. It's only 54 miles. Only 54 miles? Do you mean we must walk 54 miles? Well, there's no other way, said Kamal. Unless you prefer to sit on a mule, but your legs are too long, they'll be trailing along the ground. No, we'll have to walk. It will take us about 10 days to get to the glacier and back. But if we take enough food, there will be no problem. There are duck bungalows to stay in at night. Kamal gets all the best ideas, I said, but I suppose Anil and I will have to get our parents' permission and some money. My mother won't let me go, said Anil. She says the mountains are full of ghosts and she thinks I'll get up to some mischief. How can one get up to mischief on a lonely mountain? Have you been on the mountains, Laurie? I've been on English mountains, I said, but they are not half as high as these. Kamal seems to know about them. Only what I have read in books, said Kamal. I am sure it won't be dangerous. People are always going to the glacier. Can you see that peak above the others on the right? He pointed to the distant snow range, barely visible against the soft blue sky. The Pindari Glacier is below it. It's at 12,000 feet, I think, but we won't need any special equipment. There will be snow only for the final 2 or 3 miles. Do you know that it's the beginning of the river Sarayu? You mean our river? Asked Anil, thinking of the little river that wandered along the outskirts of the town, joining the Ganges further downstream. Yes, but it's only a trickle where it starts. How much money will we need? I asked, determined to be practical. Well, I have saved 20 rupees, said Kamal. But won't you need that for your books? I asked. No, this is extra. If each of us brings 20 rupees, we should have enough. There's nothing to spend money on once we are up on the mountains. There are only 1 or 2 villages on the way and food is scarce. So we'll have to take plenty of food with us. I learned all this from the tourist office. Kamal's been planning this without our knowledge, complained Anil. He always plans in advance, I said. But it's a good idea and it should be a fine adventure. All right, said Anil. But Laurie will have to be with me when I ask my mother. She thinks Laurie is very sensible and might let me go if he says it's quite safe. And he ended the discussion by jumping into the pool, where we soon joined him. Though my mother hesitated about letting me go, my father said it was a wonderful idea and was only sorry because he couldn't accompany us himself, which was a relief as we didn't want our parents along. And though Anil's father hesitated, or rather because he hesitated, his mother said yes. Of course, Anil must go. The mountain air would be good for his health. A puzzling remark, because Anil's health had never been better. The bazaar people, when they heard that Anil might be away for a couple of weeks, were overjoyed at the prospect of a quiet spell and pressed his father to let him go. On a cloudy day, promising rain, we bundled ourselves into the bus that was to take us to Kapkoth, where people lose their caps and coats, punned Anil, the starting point of our trek. Each of us carried a haversack and we had also brought along a good-sized bedding roll, which, apart from blankets, also contained rice and flour thoughtfully provided by Anil's mother. We had no idea how we would carry the bedding roll once we started walking, but we didn't worry much over minor details. An astrologer had told Anil's mother it was a good day for traveling, so we decided all would be well. We were soon in the hills on a winding road that took us up and up until we saw the valley and our town spread out beneath us. The river, a silver ribbon across the plain. Kamal pointed to a patch of dense sal forest and said, "Our pool must be there." We took a sharp bend and the valley disappeared, and the mountains towered above us. We had dull headaches by the time we reached Kapkot, but when we got down from the bus, a cool breeze freshened us. At the wayside shop, we drank glasses of hot sweet tea, and the shopkeeper told us we could spend the night in one of his rooms. It was pleasant at Kapkot, the hills wooded with deodar trees, the lower slopes planted with fresh green paddy. At night there was a wind moaning in the trees, and it found its way through the cracks in the windows and eventually through our blankets. Then, right outside the door, a dog began howling at the moon. It had been a good day for traveling, but the astrologer hadn't warned us that it would be a bad night for sleep. Next morning, we washed our faces at a small stream about 100 yards from the shop and filled our water bottles for the day's march. A boy from the nearby village sat on a rock studying our movements. "Where are you going?" he asked, unable to suppress his curiosity. "To the glacier," said Kamal. "Let me come with you," said the boy. "I know the way." "You are too small," said Anil. "We need someone who can carry our bedding roll." "I am small, but I am strong. I am not a weakling like the boys in the plains." Though he was shorter than any of us, he certainly looked sturdy and had a muscular, well-knit body and pink cheeks. "See," he said, and picking up a rock the size of a football, he heaved it across the stream. "I think he can come with us," I said, and the boy, whose name was Vishnu, dashed off to inform his people of his employment. We had agreed to pay him ₹1 a day for acting as our guide and Sherpa. And then we started walking, at first above the little Sarayu river, then climbing higher along the rough mule track, always within sound of the water. Kamal wanted to bathe in the river. I said it was too far, and Anil said we wouldn't reach the dark bungalow before dark if we went for a swim. Regretfully, we left the river behind and marched on through a forest of oaks over wet, rotting leaves that made a soft carpet for our feet. We ate at noon under an oak, as we didn't want to waste any time making a fire, not on this first crucial day. We ate beans from a tin and drank most of our water. In the afternoon, we came to the river again. The water was swifter now, green and bubbling, still far below us. We saw two boys in the water, swimming in an inlet, which reminded us of our own secret pool. They waved and invited us to join them. We returned their greeting, but it would have taken us an hour to get down to the river and up again, so we continued on our way. We walked 15 miles on that first day. Our speed was to decrease after this, and we were at the dark bungalow by 6 o'clock. Vishnu busied himself collecting sticks for a fire. Anil found the bungalow's watchman asleep in a patch of fading sunlight and roused him. The watchman, who hadn't been bothered by visitors for weeks, grumbled at our intrusion, but opened a room for us. He also produced some potatoes from his quarters, and these we roasted for dinner. It became cold after the sun and had gone down, and we remained close to Vishnu's fire. The damp sticks burnt fitfully. By this time, Vishnu had fully justified his inclusion in our party. He had balanced the bedding roll on his shoulder as though it were full of cotton wool instead of blankets. Now he was helping with the cooking, and we were glad to have him sharing our hot potatoes and strong tea. There were only two beds in the room, and we pushed these together, apportioning out the blankets as fairly as possible. Then the four of us slept into bed, shivering in the cold. We were already over 5,000 feet. Vishnu, in his own peculiar way, had wrapped a scarf round his neck, through a cotton singlet and shorts were all that he wore for the night. Tell us a story, Laurie, said Anil. It will help us to fall asleep. I told them one of his mother's story about a boy and a girl who had been changed into a pair of buffaloes. And then Vishnu told us about the ghost of a sadhu who was to be seen sitting in the snow by moonlight not far from the glacier. Far from putting us to sleep, this story kept us awake for hours. Aren't you asleep yet? I asked Anil in the middle of the night. No, you keep kicking me, he lied. We don't have enough blankets, complained Kamal. It's too cold to sleep. I never sleep till it's very late, mumbled Vishnu from the bottom of the bed. No one was prepared to admit that our imaginations were keeping us awake. After a little while, we heard a thud on the corrugated tin sheets, and then the sound of someone, or something, scrambling about on the roof. Anil, Kamal, and I sat up in bed, startled out of our wits. Vishnu, who had won the race to be the first one to fall asleep, merely turned over on his side and grunted. It's only a bear, he said. Didn't you notice the pumpkins on the roof? Bears love pumpkins. For half an hour, we had to listen to the bear as it clambered about on the roof, feasting on the watchman's ripening pumpkins. Finally, there was silence. Kamal and I crawled out of our blankets and went to the window. And through the frosted glass, we saw a black Himalayan bear ambling across the slope in front of the bungalow, a fat pumpkin held between its paws.